Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin Morgan, and for my learning sequence, it's going to be about trade, more specifically about the Silk Road. So it's broken into 3 days. The first day, we'll be talking about what is the Silk Road and what types of things were traded along the Silk Road. We'll be looking at 4 different things that were traded. These include goods, disease, religion, and technologies that were traded along the Silk Road. The second day, we'll be focusing more on the geography behind it, and we will be following along a day in the life of Marco Polo. And so we'll be looking at the route he took, what kind of geographical features he saw, and hearing some of his stories from the Silk Road. So it kind of gives students the context of this is how a person traveling along the Silk Road would, or what would happen to a person traveling along the Silk Road. The last day, we'll be looking at the evolution of change and some of the cultural implications that brought this on. So these could be advances in technology or advances in ideas and other things like that. So looking at how it traded or how it changed from being this caravan style, people wandering around for 3 years, trading with people to make a living, to rapid trading. So that's kind of the game plan. The second day, which we'll be talking about, will begin with a review activity, your thoughts. So I'll gather the students in a non-corona time and I'll pose the question to them. What are your thoughts on Silk Road and trade that we talked about yesterday? And here I'm looking for any ideas just thrown out, anything from yesterday's lesson. So maybe some students bring up that the Silk Road was a bunch of by land and by sea trade networks and connections where different merchants and other people would travel along to make a living. They also could bring up stuff about raiders, or maybe they could go into a specific thing that was traded, such as religion, and they could talk about how Buddhism was evolved and changed into a world religion because the Silk Road really helped spread those ideas. After that, we will lead into an activity called I Am Thinking of a Person. And so this PowerPoint will be pulled up and it says, I am thinking of a person. And essentially what there are a whole bunch of different statements. And all these statements pertain to the same person, Marco Polo. So for example, one of them is, I am a merchant. One of them was, my first trip to Asia was when I was 17 years old. I worked for Kublai Khan. I'm famous for documenting my travels in Asia. I have a book. Christopher Columbus took a copy of my book while traveling overseas. And the last questions kind of help guide the students to the answer Marco Polo. However, they can answer if they think, or shout out the answer at any time they think they know who it is. But like the last couple are, there is a game named after me where you call out my first name, Marco. And then the last one is, my book title is The Descriptions of the World, but it's more famously called The Travels of Marco Polo. And so after the students guess Marco Polo, then I will reveal the learning targets. And the reason I don't want to reveal the learning targets right away is it would kind of give away that Marco Polo is the person that we're looking at today. So the learning targets are, students will use maps to identify locations where Marco Polo traveled and summarize why that place was significant to his journey. And then the second one is, students will examine historical events from the point of view of Marco Polo and attempt to understand the purpose of his journey. And so this will lead us into our guided mapping activity. And this is the main activity during the lesson. So every student will get a map that looks like this. It will be bigger. It should take up the whole page. However, the printer was not working with me, so this is the map that I got. By the end of the guided mapping, our map should look like this. A couple things to note with this, everything is color-coded. So anytime Marco Polo travels by land, it is a dotted red line. Anytime Marco Polo travels by sea, it is a dotted blue line. Anywhere Marco Polo goes while he's working for Kublai Khan has a red target. So it really gives kids that color coding, like visual representation. Hey, here's what he's doing here. And then we'll also talk about kind of why it's important. So a couple things that we talk about on the guided mapping are we talk about a whole bunch of different places that he stopped, what he did, such as Jerusalem is one of them. Hormuz is another one, which is right here. And the Silk Road, which is right here, and students will label it. And along the Silk Road, we'll have students participate in a sharing trio where they would discuss kind of what things they traded. And they'll use their background knowledge from yesterday about learning about things that were traded along the Silk Road to kind of try to figure out what Marco Polo would have traded or what Marco Polo's family would have traded. And then we'll talk about how his family traded jewelry and things like that, and how it was easily concealable but worth a lot of money, and they could carry it in bulk. And so that was a really good thing for them to trade. We will also talk about the different physical features that Marco Polo encountered while he was on his trip to Asia or to China, and such as the Gobi Desert and the Himalayas and how those impacted his routes. One of the things we will be doing is when we go through the Gobi Desert, we'll be looking at a piece of textual goodness from Marco Polo's The Travels of Marco Polo book. And that piece of textual goodness is: the desert is reported to be so long that it would take a year to go from end to end. And at the narrowest point, it takes a month to cross it. It consists entirely of mountains and sands and valleys. There is nothing at all to eat. So I would have the students reflect on how they would feel if they're Marco Polo, and they'll kind of analyze this quote and think, okay, so like, what do we do? Like, how are you feeling? And kind of look at the emotions behind what Marco Polo could have been feeling at this time. The last breakout activity we will do in like kind of small groups or whatever is it takes 3 years to cross. It takes Marco Polo 3 years to go along the Silk Road to get to China. And so I kind of connect this to students. Did you know it took Marco Polo 3 years to cross the Silk Road? What's the longest road trip you've ever been on? And what were you feeling on that road trip? And so from the students, I'm looking for things like, oh, we were tired, like we were exhausted. And we'll use a quick whip around strategy to have the students describe one word that they were feeling or one phrase that they were feeling while they were on this trip, and kind of try to put themselves in the point of view of Marco Polo to understand how he was feeling. I'll take you through one point that we talk about, and kind of just to show you how I would do the guided mapping activity. Once we get to Genoa up here, this is at the end of Marco Polo's travels, and Marco Polo was a war captain, and when he was 44, he was imprisoned by the Genoese soldiers. And he was thrown into prison, and he was put in there with an Italian romance writer, and this romance writer was named Rustichello de Pisa, and they were really bored in their cell. And so Marco Polo started telling Rustichello all these different stories that he had from his travels, and Rustichello, because he's this romance writer, started writing them down. And by the time Rustichello and Marco Polo got out of prison, they had this huge book that they shared with the world. And the book was originally entitled The Description of the World, but then it was changed very quickly to The Travels of Marco Polo, because everyone knew that this was Marco Polo. And even further than that, some people didn't believe all these things that Marco Polo said in his book, because they were just so different from the ideas that people in Venice had originally learned and had been taught their entire life. So they changed the book title to Il Milione, which means a million lies, because they didn't believe Marco Polo. And so that's just an example. And for this, we would draw a picture of Rustichello, some jail bars, and a book. And so after that, we would have the students partake in the last wrap-up part of Make a Postcard, Maria. And in this, students would have already drawn the picture on the front from their the previous lesson. However, it is their turn to draw a picture or put the stamp in and write a postcard from the point of view of Marco Polo. So I would show them this example. I would read the back of things I had. But during this postcard, during this creating the script, it's their job to answer the questions. Where is Marco Polo at the time? What is he doing there? And why is his journey important? Why is his journey important in general, and how does it change the world? And so I would assess them formally on this and informally on all the other group discussion things.